What's it like to live as a female expat in Asia? Can I take my dog or my cat with me? And what happens if I get really sick? Will my embassy or my high commission come and help me out? Well, if those questions or any other questions about living as an expat, and especially as a female expat in Asia, are of interest to you, great to have you with me. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I have lived and worked in 5 different countries in Asia. And I still live and work in Asia, now in Thailand. And I've come down to the beach to walk my dog this Saturday afternoon, and the tide is really up. So I'm battling the sound of the sea, so I apologize for that. That's the Gulf of Thailand you can hear off in the distance. But I wanted to talk about a really serious and important topic today that affects all expats. And I've alluded to it in the questions about what happens if you get into trouble. How much role does your embassy or high commission have if you find yourself in trouble? Now, you may have seen recently in the press that there's, just this week in fact, there's a young Briton has been arrested in Thailand, and at this stage it's all alleged and we don't know, the outcome, but was caught I think in a hotel room with a suitcase full of methamphetamine. Young lad, 23 years old. Now, until he's convicted, I can't say anything about the charge, other than to say that when people get shocked that an embassy or a high commission cannot step in and do something in this situation, I get a bit surprised, because I think it's a misunderstanding as to how much role an embassy or a high commission can have in your personal life if you get into trouble when you're living overseas. It's not only about legal things as well, it's also about if you die, body repatriation, things like that. But let's look at the legal side of it first. Okay, so there's enough stories in the last decade or two all around Asia of people trafficking in drugs or carrying drugs or being mules for drugs or whatever it is, who get into trouble in Asian countries. And the laws are very, very strict and the penalties are very, very harsh. There's still the death penalty in a lot of countries, including in Thailand. There's caning, which is mostly a Singaporean thing, but they'll whack the hell out of you in many other countries. The sentences are long, way long, and the conditions in the jails are not amazing, let's be honest. And people say, well, that's terrible, because, in my home country, we don't have the death penalty. So my embassy, my country should step in and say, hey, we don't have the death penalty where we live. So my national, they shouldn't have to suffer the death penalty. But that is not the role of your embassy or your high commission. It is not their job to interfere in the laws of the country that you are staying in. If you've broken local laws, you have to abide by local punishments. That's just the way it is. And there is absolutely nothing your embassy or your high commission, your government can do. Doesn't matter if you're a national, doesn't matter if you're otherwise a good person, you've got a blameless record. If you've broken the law in that country, your high commission, your embassy can do absolutely nothing to help you in terms of getting you off the charge or getting the charge, reduced or something like that. It just cannot happen. That would be international interference in a legal system, and that is a no, no, no for a long, long time. Let's go back to, like Vietnam War times, okay? So that's the reality of the situation. Now, what can they do to help you? Okay, they do step in and help you find legal advice. So they can offer to find you a lawyer. If you don't have any money, they might be able to provide you with the funding for a lawyer so that you do have legal representation. Maybe some countries like that. They will get in contact with your people. So they'll call your family, all of that sort of stuff. But they're not going to put up money to help you. They're not going to fly your family out to see you because you've been busted and, now you're sitting in a jail cell waiting for your sentence. That's just not going to happen. That's not the role of the local government. Doesn't matter how much tax you pay, and you can stand there and, beat your chest and say, but I'm a national and, you've got to look after me. No, 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 no. You're an adult and you've made a mistake. You're in trouble and you have to cop that. That's how it is. They will not see you starve, but they're not going to spend a lot of money on fixing a problem that you've made for yourself. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's certainly not their role, and would cause an enormous international kerfuffle if every country turned around and said, well, you can't hang our nationals because we don't hang people in my country. I mean, there are signs all over Asia that say that if you traffic in drugs and you get caught, the penalties are really, really harsh. I first left Australia, as it turns out, to go into Asia in 1988. And there were signs in the airport that says Dada is death, Dada being the local word there for drugs. You know, there's no question that the penalties are what we may consider barbaric or stretched too far, but that's their rule. Those are their laws. I do understand the irony of the amount of drug trafficking that happens in Asia anyway. I know about that. I'm not stupid. It doesn't mean to say you have to get involved in it. Please don't. It's a really stupid thing to do. And it's the same if you created, if you killed somebody, there was a homicide, or you're involved in a bad accident and you're found to be drunk driving, all sorts of things. If you get into trouble in an Asian country, do not expect somebody else to step in there like Zorro and come and rescue. It's just not going to happen. And the other thing that you might be surprised to discover is that if tragedy occurs and let's say you're killed overseas or you die overseas, your government is under no obligation to repatriate your body. They are not going to send your body home simply because you're a national. That's just not true. If you're a member of the armed forces, that may be different. Because if you've died in duty, maybe they have I'm sure they have an obligation there. But if you die in a car accident, don't expect your body to be flown home. That's not going to happen. Your family can pay for that. It is outrageously expensive. I'm sad to say that I've actually had experience in that with an American national friend of mine passed away unexpectedly, and the sheer cost of trying to get his body repatriated was out of the question. In the end, was cremated in Thailand. So that is something to think about, all right? Your embassy is not a lifeline for you to rescue you when you get into trouble. You're a fully grown adult and you need to take responsibility for that. Whether you're a tourist or whether you're an expat, it is exactly the same. So please keep that in mind. Don't blame your embassy or your country. Don't say, oh, that's terrible, they're not taking care of their people. That's not true. They just can't do that for everybody. And for big countries who have many, many people traveling overseas, could you imagine what would happen? So that's a little bit crazy. So that's something to think about, all right? The simple answer is try not to break any laws when you're in Asia. It is really harsh. They do still have caning, as I said, in Singapore. And I remember there was a very famous case of a young lad who, I think he was an American, who'd done some graffiti not that many years ago and was publicly caned. And his family were outraged and everybody was outraged. But, you know, that's the punishment in Singapore if you're caught creating graffiti. That's what happened, and it's horrible, and caning is disgusting, and I can't imagine anything worse. But that was the punishment for the law that he broke, and so that was his punishment. That was all there is. Now, if you've got any questions, look, it's so little beach that they have to walk the horses in this tight little formation. If you've got any questions about other things about being an expat in Asia, and if you're a woman and there's some topics that you'd like me to cover from a woman's perspective, getting lots of feedback about people interested in knowing what life is like as a female expat. I'll have a day in the life coming up soon. Then do leave a comment down below. Please like or subscribe if you'd like to, because that really helps the algorithm. The little channel has only been going for a little while. We're doing okay, but it's so great to have your support. It is very encouraging for me, and I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Hope the sea wasn't too noisy. Let me do a little spin around so you can see. There it is. That's the Gulf of Thailand there. And up there is a place that we locally call Monkey Mountain. And that's because there's a whole lot of damn monkeys up there, the macaques, and they are not my friends. I do not like macaques. But apart from that, have yourself a great day, and we'll speak again soon. Bye.